to my channel. So I know I said I was going to do a video in Spanish this week, and I really did want to, but I've been working, not overtime, but I've been basically working extra hours at the school this week because they needed my help with something. So I've just not had the time to sit down and film it, let alone write the subtitles, because a video in Spanish is going to take a lot longer to edit. So I thought today I would do another really highly requested video. I know that this doesn't really apply to everybody, but it is honestly the video I probably get requested the most at the moment, because a lot of you are looking at studying abroad. You either study languages, or your university offers a study abroad option, or perhaps you just want to take a gap year. So basically this video is going to be all about studying abroad, working abroad, years abroad, how to organise it, how to plan it, how it kind of all works, and my personal experience with it. I'm still not used to my hair. I got it dyed this morning and it's actually so much darker than it was, but I do actually really like it, even if the curls have kind of fallen out after walking back from work in the 30-degree heat. This video is really kindly sponsored by Wondrium. If you want to find out more about them, then stay tuned. I'm actually really excited about this sponsorship, and you'll see why, you'll understand why when we get to it. So I asked you all for your questions, as always, on my Instagram, which is @EveBennettXX. Please do go follow me over there if you want to get involved on my videos, in my videos, because that is normally where I ask the questions. Okay, the first question is, what was the process like? When did you start applying for jobs, etc.? So I actually am thinking a lot of this stuff is going to be kind of caveated by the fact that the pandemic definitely did impact everything quite a lot. So pre-pandemic, they advise you to start looking at options the year after your first year. So if your sandwich year is normally that you do 2 years at university, then you do a sandwich year, and then after the sandwich year you do 1 more year, right? So at the end of your first year, that's really a good time to maybe not be looking at the specifics, but definitely to be getting an idea of exactly what it is that you want to be doing. Do you want to be working? Do you want to be studying? Obviously your university might not give you the option to do anything. You might have to study, you might have to work. Looking at sort of where you might think you want to go. For me, the way I sort of picked was, I know this sounds really silly, but honestly, watching like travel guides on YouTube, reading up about the cities, the history, the culture, thinking about also what sort of person I am. So for example, I know personally that I would not want to have gone to like a rural village for 6 months. Some people really enjoy doing that, especially for languages, because it is a really good way to get fully immersed in the language. But I knew that my mental health, it just wouldn't be worth the cost to my mental health, basically, because 6 months with minimal social contact for an extrovert is just not really going to work out. So I decided on Berlin for that reason, because I was like, it's busy, it's big, there's loads to do, and also because I'd already lived there for a month before. That was also something that I took into account. I also thought about where other people were going to be, where it was likely that it'd be quite easy to make friends, and also just about kind of what I wanted to get out of the year. I knew Berlin from the start, like that I wanted to go back to Berlin after I'd lived there. But I originally picked Argentina as my second option, and I picked that because I wanted to challenge myself. I wanted to go somewhere completely different, somewhere I'd never been before, and do something completely different, study something completely different, and just really throw myself in the deep end and experience a completely like different culture. Obviously, when the pandemic struck, I had to just scrap everything and go back to the drawing board, and it really was a case of like, where will take me essentially, and where can I go safely. And so that's why I ended up obviously staying in Europe rather than going to Latin America. Our university aren't even like accepting travel insurance applications for Latin America at the moment, and I can kind of understand why. But yeah, so the first thing you really want to do is think, what do I want to get out of my year abroad? Like, what is it that's the main thing? Is it the social aspect? Is it the cultural aspect? Is it the language aspect? Is it a little bit of everything like it was for me? And that's kind of what I started doing in the summer before my second year. And then in my second year, then I started like looking at internships, just start like little bits, like little and often. You don't have to do it all over one weekend. I just, whenever I had a spare 30 minutes, would be like browsing on places like LinkedIn, on job sites, looking at like Erasmus websites. There are lots of intern websites, which I will link down below, that I used. I can't remember what they're called off the top of my head, but I have a list of them on my notes on my phone that also do really good ones, like Erasmus internships, and there's loads, but I'll put them down below. And also looking on, I don't know if your university perhaps has Facebook groups. I know Oxford has linguist Facebook groups, and people will often advertise the placement that they've been on the year before on there. They're like, oh, I was on a placement in France, in Paris. It pays this much. This is like what they're looking for. Here's the number of the person if you want to contact them. That's how I got my placement in Berlin, essentially. One of the girls 2 years above me recommended it. She just messaged me and said, look, I know that everything with the pandemic has been a nightmare. I know that your internships have fallen through, the ones that you'd already organised. I did this one 2 years ago. I really enjoyed it. Here's the editor's number. And that's how I got my first internship. My second internship, I genuinely just emailed every single language school in Seville and other cities in the south of Spain until one of them replied. And that only one replied, and that's the school that I'm at the moment. So sometimes you really just have to be quite persistent, but as I said, little and often is much better, or else it's going to feel really overwhelming. There's lots of things that you kind of have to plan. It also depends on how much support your university gives you. If it's a study abroad program that's not for languages, often, you know, you have to pick a list of universities, like a priority list, and they kind of decide for you where you're going to go. But if you're doing languages, then you have to decide as well, like, where am I going to go? Am I going to split my time 50-50 between the two languages? If I do one language, am I going to go to like 2 different countries that speak that language? There's so many things that you have to think about in this aspect. But yeah, little and often would be my #1 advice with this. Like 100%, just do it sort of half an hour on the weekend, brainstorm and keep everything together, whether that's on the notes on your phone of like useful links that you found. I had a massive notes of like job positions that I'd found, and like YouTube videos that I'd found really useful, and just sort of like cultural tips and tricks of the places that I was going to go to. I just had a big folder on my phone of notes of like things that I found really helpful. So try and keep it all in one place, do it little and often, and start early. Definitely start at the start of your second year latest, because you never know what can happen. Exhibit A, global pandemic. But I have to say, even if you do leave it last minute, it will be stressful, but you will figure it out. Like, I had to basically rearrange my year abroad on the fly, which actually was it was a nightmare at the time, but I'm kind of really glad that it happened, because that's another skill that I've learned this year, is having to adapt and change and just be pushed in directions that I wasn't really planning on being pushed in. And I am so glad, I'm so glad that it all worked out the way that it did, because I'm in Seville now, which probably is my favourite city ever. Like, I absolutely adore it here. And I would never even considered it had it not been for all my plans being cancelled. So yeah, you have to be prepared to adapt, change last minute. The year abroad's not going to go completely smoothly, but definitely start early if you can. But it's not the end of the world if you don't. Also worth mentioning that Brexit has definitely complicated things, as well as coronavirus travel restrictions at the moment. So for a lot of people in our year, for example, the kind of January double whammy of Brexit happening, and the embassies not really knowing what to do. Like, how does this work? How are we going to offer visas? How is it all going to pan out? Plus a lot of countries being like, we do not want the Brits right now. It was a bit of a nightmare for some people. They were allowed to enter the country, for example, with France, but the embassies weren't giving out visas, or it was really, really long, complicated process that nobody really understood. In my case, in the end, I had to drive to Manchester to get my visa, fill out about a bajillion forms and pay, I think it was like £60. And that was fine in the end. Like, it's a bit of a nightmare, you know, as a Remainer. I do it begrudgingly. Doing visas is something that you really need to take into account, and definitely just speak to your university about this, because it's so individual for each country. I don't want to give visa advice. All I would say, at least in the case of Spain, was that it was much easier to get an unpaid internship / studying visa than it was to get a paid one. So if you want to make your life easier and you're able to get like financial support to be able to do an unpaid internship, which I'll go on to in a little bit. Of course, you know, it depends on your individual situation. You should still be getting your student loan from your university. So if you are in the financial situation where you are getting enough support that you can do an unpaid internship or study, it is easier to get a visa. And so it's definitely worth bearing that in mind too. And you also have to remember about, like, you know, like health insurance and just all of the kind of things that you didn't have to worry about before are definitely there. It doesn't take ridiculously long, but a visa does take 6 weeks, kind of more or less, to sort of the whole process. So you have to take that into account too if you're going to leave it really last minute. I wouldn't. Okay, that was a really long first answer. Basically summarize, start early, little and often, and remember that Brexit has kind of added a lot more steps onto the process. The next one is, how did you find your accommodation? So I've just spoken about how I found my jobs, which is basically just a lot of asking around, and sadly accommodation is the same, but I'm gonna go through different ways in which that you can find it. So if you're like Lydia, for example, she's applying to a university and the university had accommodation, and so if you're doing a study abroad program through your university where you've been offered an Erasmus place, an exchange place, a lot of the time the accommodation will come with like that, part and parcel of that. It will be a lot like choosing your university accommodation at home. If you're like me and you kind of had to organize it, you know, yourself, which is kind of what most linguists tend to have to do, there are lots of different places you can look. So for example, in Germany, bday is like the best website. They have loads and loads and loads of apartments on there. It's a long process. You're gonna find lots that you don't like. You're gonna go to like virtual viewings and not get along with the flatmates. Some people will just ignore you. Some will fall through at the last minute. You have to start with that early-ish. Not too early because there won't be many offers. A lot of apartments are offered up quite last minute, especially in Germany, but don't leave it to like 2 weeks before. Or alternatively, what you might want to do is go and get an Airbnb for the first 2 weeks while you're there, because then you can actually go and view the flats and talk to the people in person. I didn't do that because of Corona. I was like, I just really need to know that I've got somewhere to go. But I made sure that the landlord sent me videos, that he like answered all of my questions, that I was 100% sure that it was gonna be a good flat. It was a great flat. Like, I prefer this one because it's a little bit more furnished, and I obviously couldn't ship a load of furniture and like decorations over to Berlin, so my room was always quite sparse. But apart from the landlord, who was not the nicest person in the world, it was a great location, like great facilities, and it worked out really, really well. Spain, Portugal, and I believe Italy, they use Idealista is another really good one to use, but you also have to bear in mind that things like bday and Idealista are probably better for longer stays of like 4, 5, 6 months, maybe more, because it's kind of like an official, you know, lots of normal people who aren't students going on a year abroad are also using that, like young professionals and things like that. So they're better for sort of 3, 4, 5 month lets. I couldn't find anything on Idealista really, because you have to pay so many upfront fees in Spain, for example, like the sort of commission fees, that it just wasn't really financially viable, and like with all of the contracts it would have been really difficult to get out of them because they're kind of long-term lets. But if you're coming for the whole year, somewhere like bday, Idealista are great. Or if you're not coming for the whole year, you can also look for sublets, aka people that are letting out their rooms on those websites but for short times. There are loads of filters that you can click to basically find what's best for you. If you're like me and you're coming for a short time, I can honestly recommend Airbnb. It's expensive, but if you're coming, say for example you're doing like a 1 month language course in like one country just to refresh your other language, it is a good way to go. You can actually get some really good deals as well. If you stay for a month or 2 months, you get like I got like a 40% discount one time, you know, because I was just there for long term, so it actually didn't work out much more expensive. Obviously it's not good for long-term options. It's definitely more affordable to go and get like a long-term apartment, but if you are like me, it was very all last minute because of, I don't know, because of Rona or because your plans have changed or whatever, then I would definitely recommend Airbnb. What I did was I looked on Airbnb, messaged the person, and they were like, oh, that apartment's not available anymore, but we have all of these other ones. And then I ended up going through their sort of like agency essentially. So there are loads of places to look. There are also student websites like Erasmus U, Erasmus Accommodation, and the best of the best, especially if you're a student, is to look on the Erasmus Facebook groups. I guarantee you, every single city, if you type in Erasmus, or not even Erasmus, like student rooms Seville, or student rooms Rome, or student, like, or just rooms, like rooms to let Rome, there are so many Facebook groups where people are advertising rooms constantly all the time. Some are for longer term lets, some are for shorter term lets, but it's definitely worth having a look through that as well, because a lot of my friends found their apartments through there, like people who were going away for a semester and they needed to let out their room, or sort of also property agents who just had student accommodation. And of course then obviously you can see the person, you can speak with them directly, and it's kind of all done separately, and there's not like commission fees and anything like that. So yeah, I would basically recommend the Facebook groups, websites like Idealista and bday. Just look online to see like what your country's website is essentially. Kind of basically the versions of like Rightmove and things like that in the UK. And also Airbnb, if you're looking for a short-term let, is actually a lot more useful than you would think. Next one is, how do you go about making Spanish bank accounts, etc.? Do you have to sign up to the healthcare system and things like that? Again, it really depends on how long you're staying. So for example, with Germany, I didn't get a German bank account. I obviously registered, but I didn't really get myself hooked up to the infrastructure of Germany because I was only there for 4.5 months. If you're staying for your whole year, it's 100% worth setting up a Spanish bank account, setting up a German bank account. In Spain, obviously, you'd need to get the tarjeta de residencia as well, because that brings a load of benefits with it too. You know, getting yourself a doctor, etc. All of which I can't really give individual advice on because it's obviously different for each city, each country. If you're only going for a short period of time, I can recommend Monzo, Revolut, Sterling Bank, like cards like that. My Monzo card, literally trying not to show you the actual thing, but this has been my lifesaver. There are no transaction fees. I know, word of a lie, Santander charges me £25 to do an international transaction, and it charges me 2% on every single thing that I buy. So my Monzo card has been an absolute lifesaver. You can also track exactly how much you're spending, and it's kind of like my year abroad card. I don't use it when I'm at home, really. I only use it when I go abroad. So it's a really, really good way to know exactly how much you've spent, which would probably be a lot because year abroad is just expensive, man. But I would really, really recommend getting a card like that, like Monzo or Revolut, if you're only going for a short period of time, or if you're going to 2 countries and you don't want the faff of setting up a bank account, because especially in Germany, I took one look at that process. Germany's just, the bureaucracy in Germany. You think Spain would be the bureaucratic one with all the papers and stuff, but it is absolutely Germany. Like, it is a nightmare getting signed up for anything in Germany, which is why I just, quite frankly, didn't bother. Was it a minor inconvenience at times? Maybe. But honestly, because I wasn't there for longer than 6 months, I just didn't think it was really worth it. The next one is, how much uni stuff are you having to do on your year abroad in preparation for your final year? How have you fit in work? If I'm brutally honest, I haven't. Do we want the honest truth? Because I mean, I'm gonna give it to you. Since I finished that last essay on June 20th last year, I have not done any large chunk of work. I've done bits and bobs, like sorted out my vocab. I've done a lot of sorting, and that's kind of what I'm planning on doing for the next couple of months, especially. It's just getting my ducks in a row for final year, you know, getting all the lists of reading that I need to do, getting a plan in place, getting those vocab lists all organized, ready to go. Have I actually had to do that much work this year? No. Oxford are very much like, leave. As I've said multiple times, Oxford kind of just say bye-bye, we'll see you in a year, like, which is actually kind of bad, because we are examined on our 2nd and 4th year. Like, our 2nd year counted for nothing. It's all on 4th year, and we have to like learn everything again from 2nd year, which, can I say, I have forgotten everything. I read an essay the other day and it actually nearly brought me to tears, because I was like, I could not write that now. I do not have the intellectual capacity to write that now. But no, I have a couple of essays set. I have to write 2 Spanish essays for one of my literature papers and an essay in Spanish, but I'm gonna do that in September as a way of getting back into it and revising, if that makes sense. And for German, we had to do like a mini year abroad project. I'm not even sure if it's like compulsory. I don't think anybody's really sure. I don't think many people actually do it. The Spanish work's definitely compulsory. My tutor will skin me alive if I don't do it, but the German work, no. I know other universities make you write essays on your experiences on the year abroad. Oxford's never really been like that. It's quite a light touch. It's like a light touch approach, like a light touch pushing you away into the distance basically for a year. And then you kind of have a chat about it with your tutor when you get back, and that's kind of really it. But I have been trying to keep myself remotely intellectually stimulated for the last year, because as lovely as it's been to have a rest, you know, you got to keep those cogs whirring, and that is where Wondrium comes in, who have very kindly sponsored this video. So you've heard me talk about the Great Courses Plus probably a million times, because I absolutely love them and I love working with them. And basically they decided to make the educational experiences that they offer bigger and better than ever before. In comes Wondrium, which is what they're now called. So on Wondrium, you can basically find all the amazing content that they had on the Great Courses Plus, all the courses, all of the series, plus so much more. If you're a curious person like me, Wondrium is basically a website where you can find the answer to anything you've ever been curious about, whether it's Egyptian history, cooking, sewing, crafts, art, music, politics, you name it. they've got something about it on there. You can learn something new. They have a carefully curated collection of short and long form videos, how-tos, travel logs, documentaries, you name it, it's probably on there. They're all so well researched and presented by entertaining and engaging experts in their fields. I've really taken this year to take a kind of step back away from the content that I study at university and pursue other things that interest me. This week I actually watched a video on Wondrium about Hamilton and how Hamilton has revolutionized the concept of the Broadway musical. You might be like, Eve, you don't study anything to do with music or musicals. I know, but I find it really, really interesting. It's just sometimes so nice to just watch something that you're interested in for the sake of being interested in it and wanting to expand your mind, rather than because you're working to a deadline or you're having to learn something for the purpose of using it in an exam or in an assignment. Whether you want to watch their shorter clips or you want to dedicate yourself to a whole series, there is so much on there to go and browse and explore. So if you go to wondrium.com/Eve, then you can start your free trial today. I really would recommend checking it out. You can go and find everything you need to do that in the description. Thank you so much to Wondrium for sponsoring this video and for telling me all about why Hamilton revolutionized Broadway, because I found it thoroughly interesting, and when I do eventually go and see Hamilton on Broadway, I'm gonna be popping off with the knowledge. The next question is, have you preferred living alone or with flatmates? So for context, I live alone here, like alone. In fact, it's a really quiet building. I don't know anyone who lives in my building. Like, it's not a social studio. It's not like a student studio. I have no clue. I don't think that I've even seen anybody else that lives in my building because it's a really quiet building. I say this, somebody's having a party in the courtyard outside, but that's like not part of the building. It's just a square and there's loads of like 16-year-olds getting trolleyed. I'm not entirely sure why. And then in Berlin, it was kind of the opposite. I lived with two flatmates and I knew like the whole building. They were all girls of my age who studied there or were working there, doing their internships, basically like loads of people in the same situation that I was. I honestly don't know which one I prefer. In principle, I prefer living alone. I really like having my own space. Right now, I need to do the washing up. I've not done it. No one's gonna kill me if I haven't. It's on me. I have space to just like put all of my stuff. Like, I can just leave my stuff wherever I wanna leave it. I can do whatever I want. I can walk around naked if I like. I can, do you know what I mean? Like, I just love living by myself in that respect. Sometimes, yeah, especially because this apartment has less natural light, which I knew about like from the start, and it doesn't bother me normally at all. If I'm in a bad mood, it's not helping, but like a lot of Spanish apartments don't have much natural light, and I was in such a last minute like search for an apartment, I decided that I could live with that for 3 months. Sometimes when I wake up, because I'm not speaking to anybody in the morning, I can work myself into a little bit of a rut, and then I go out and I socialise. I'm like, oh my God, everything's actually fine. It's really, really difficult because I really love my own space. Like, I really value my own space. After 4 months at home, it wasn't an option for me to go and live with people. I just really needed, you know, this might be the only time in my life where I just live completely by myself. Who knows? But I also am quite a social being. So I think if I could have the best of both worlds, like, that would be ideal. Live by yourself, but live in a building where you kind of meet everybody, if that makes sense. I really love that aspect of Berlin, where like if we wanted to do something, like there were just people on our floor or like on the floor below. We could just go out for a quick coffee on Bergmannstraße, and it was just all really fun. Why did I just say like Straße? Like, what the hell was that? You know what I mean? But also sometimes living with flatmates, like I just wanted to have a shower, or like they'd be really loud, the walls were quite thin, if you know what I mean. And so sometimes, yeah, I just wanted to go into the kitchen and cook something, and I just wasn't in the mood to socialise. So there's the pros and the cons, you know what I mean? So I think the best of both worlds, for me at least, would be to live by myself, but to live in a building where you could have people around when you wanted them around. I've really preferred Seville, I think, in terms of my living situation, just because I like having music on, dancing around, like tidying when I want to tidy, not having to deal with other people's mess. But also, if I hadn't have made as many friends here, which I've been really, really fortunate to do, yeah, it could get a little bit lonely. So I think, yeah, I can't say for sure which one you prefer. You have to think about you personally. I know some people here that live in houses of like 15. I would quite frankly rather just no, I just can't even think about that concept. That would just not be for me. Some people love that because they love the party, social life, whatever. I couldn't deal with the mess of 15 people in my kitchen, do you know what I mean? So yeah, you might be an introvert that just really, really enjoys their own company, in which case a studio apartment's probably better for you. But if you're concerned about making friends, then maybe flatmates are better, because then you can meet your flatmates' friends. It's a difficult one. It's a really personal thing. I personally think ultimately, I like living alone. Who am I kidding? Like, this leads me actually really, really nicely on to the next question, which is, have you had any year abroad romances? Yes and no. Yes, I have seen people. I don't know what the definition of seen is. I've been on multiple dates with people and it has progressed in some respects, and then it's kind of fizzled out because I am just too comfortable with my own company. It's actually really, I'm actually starting to think it's a problem. Look, I know you guys aren't my therapists or anything like that, but I'm too comfortable with my own company. I'm too comfortable by myself. And I think Liv is always just like, it's because the right person has not come along that you're not willing to like let somebody in, basically. Because every single romance I've had on my year abroad, I have ended because either I'm just not clicking with their personality enough, or they want to go in a different direction to how I want to go. And it's also really difficult on your year abroad because you're in the place for like 3-4 months, and then you're both going to be going somewhere completely different. So if you're into like a short fling, like, you know, full-on romance, great. But we all know that I'm not a casual person. I'm such a slow burner. I'm actually like the slowest burner I know. And if it goes too quickly, then I instantly just shut it down and run away. Like, I can't deal with it. Like, fun story, somebody kissed me on the first day, and I actually, like, from that exact moment, like, I wouldn't say got the ick, but I was like, no, I'm done here. Like, for me, that just shuts it down straight away. I'm not, like, I just can't do it if it goes too quickly, which on a year abroad is really a problem when you don't really have much time. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're either going to see them or you're not going to see them. So it's a difficult one. I have had year abroad romances. Has it been like an explosive, I've fallen in love, met the person I'm going to marry? Absolutely not, because I'm actually kind of convinced now that I'm never going to meet the person that I'm going to marry, or even just be in a relationship with, because I seem to be fundamentally incapable of associating with people in that way. But that's a story for another day, and you know, we don't really need to be out here talking about the things that keep me up at night, do we? No, we absolutely don't. Yeah, so I have had year abroad romances, and in terms of advice, dating apps, Bumble, I can't, Tinder I can't get behind, I'm sorry people, I've just deleted it. Bumble, Hinge, love them both. I think they're both really good in their own ways, but you have to be really open with people about them, what they want, or else you get yourself into a sticky situation like I did the other day, basically. So I can't believe I'm being this open about it. It feels really weird. We all know I just don't talk about love much on this channel. I mean, I've never really been in love, but you know what I mean. I don't talk about relationships or anything because I've never been in one. But yeah, Bumble, Tinder, if you're into that sort of thing, which is totally fine if you are. Just saying, like, it's just absolutely not for me. Hinge is probably the best, I think, like, but there's not many people that use Hinge in Spain. And yeah, there's also the language barrier to think about. Like, when I've gone on dates with Germans, for example, I find it quite easy. I'm like, okay, I can get through this, and like, they can normally speak really, really good English. Spanish, I feel like I've got no personality in Spanish, and I sometimes struggle to understand them too, so, especially with the Andalusian accent. So I think you have to also take the language barrier into account in these situations, but don't let a language barrier stop you from falling in love. I'm not saying that, I'm just saying it's definitely something to bear in mind, essentially. To conclude, I am still fundamentally incapable of maintaining a romantic relationship with anybody. Will that ever change? Stay tuned. If one day I actually do get married, I give you all permission to tell me I told you so, but I just can't imagine it because I am such a wimp. Are my standards too high? Am I just not good at it at all? Am I unlovable? We shall never know. Or maybe we will. The next question is, do you prefer Seville or Berlin? And this was the most common question, and this is the question I get all the time, and this is the question I ask myself all the time, because I would have told you until about a week ago, I don't know. And I think this week, I don't know what's happened, I just love Seville, man. Is genuine. If you've not been to Seville and you ever get a chance to come, absolutely do. Every other person that I've met here that's come to visit Seville from other parts of Spain has been like, wow, isn't Seville gorgeous? How beautiful is Seville? It is, in my opinion, the prettiest city in Spain. It is the nicest city in Spain. I have like actually no tangible complaints about Seville. It's stunning. There is culture and architecture and history everywhere. The people are really, really friendly. The food is fantastic. The weather, okay. Heat's a bit much sometimes for my British self, but I absolutely I adore it here. There's so much to do. Like, there's just so many places you can go, so many things you can try, and the staff are always so friendly. I don't think I've ever loved a city more, because there's something about it that just brings out the best in me. And you asked me like 6 months ago, could you imagine yourself living in Spain? I would have flat out said no. Germany's always been the one that I thought, oh, if I'm gonna move abroad, it would be to Germany. I would love to come and live in Seville for like another 2-3 years. So many of us have said that, and there is so much of me that just wants to get a job out here after I graduate and come and work here for a couple of years. I know I really should go and do the NCTJ if I want to be a journalist in the UK long term. But man, I would absolutely love to come and live out here for a little bit longer. But I'd also really like to go and live in Germany for a little bit. I don't know. When somebody says to me, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Combine this question with the romantic relationships question and you basically have the crux of what keeps me up at night, people. Who knows basically where I'm going to be in 5 years, who I'm going to be with, if I'm going to be with anybody. Am I going to be working? Am I going to be studying? Am I going to be... Whoa. We'll save that existential crisis for another day, I think. But basically the crux of the matter is I prefer Seville to Berlin. Berlin is fantastic. I adore Berlin and I would 100% like go and spend some time there. Can I see myself living there anymore? No, I just think Seville, I can't explain it, but Berlin's got a lot to offer, but it can be quite great and gloomy, and it's just very Berlin, do you know what I mean? It's very intense, and I think actually weirdly I prefer the kind of Spanish way of life, but I also don't know if I can see myself living here forever. Do you know what? I have no idea what I'm doing with my life, and every single time I think I do, then I change my mind. But if you guys did a year abroad and you ended up going back after you finished when you graduated, please do let me know if you would recommend doing that for a while before coming back and settling in the UK, or if you ended up not settling in the UK at all. I think I just worry that I would miss my family too much and I would miss my home comforts too much, and I think I don't know. The next one is how to pack, how to fit your life into a suitcase. I've done it like two polar opposite ways each. Sorry about the people screaming in the background. I can't film this any other time and they are being incredibly loud. I definitely did the two extremes. When I went to Berlin, because as I said, my apartment really just wasn't like, it was very just white IKEA plain, and I was like, well, I need to add character to that, but I just bought everything in the kitchen sink. Granted, I had to bring winter clothes, and coats and jackets like take up so much more space, but it was such a nightmare getting everything home. I just bought way too much stuff and I ended up having to clear out loads of stuff. I would very much recommend Send My Bag though. If you need to ship multiple suitcases, sendmybag.com. They pick it up from your door, drop it off at your house. It's all tracked. It's like 35 euros a bag. It's the best service that I've used to ship things. Sometimes you have some problems with the German postal service because the German postal service is a whole other thing, but generally they're very reliable and very, very good. So if you do need to ship bags, I would recommend Send My Bag. But then when I came to Seville, I was like, oh my God, like I am being ruthless. Like I'm bringing like, you know, my gym shoes and like 2 pairs of trainers and like a pair of sandals. I'm only bringing like so many outfits, like 1 pair of everything. And I actually feel like that was a mistake as well, because I limited myself a little bit too much. It's really hard to find the balance between not bringing so much that's unnecessary but also not limiting yourself, because what have I done here? I've just bought stuff, like for God's sake, like I just have a shopping addiction, like, which the good thing about being here is that I don't really get parcels delivered to my apartment, so the online shopping has stopped. But does that stop me from going into town and having a sneaky look in the shops? No. But I would say expect to come home with more than what you came with. So if you can leave space in your suitcase, ideal. But honestly, it's quite normal to buy another suitcase while you're out there and bring it back with you. It's going to be expensive. Moving a lot of stuff is expensive, whether you pay the baggage fees for the airline, whether you pay for send my bag, which is cheaper to be fair. Moving stuff is expensive, so you're essentially having to pay to move stuff that you've paid for, so bear that in mind. If you see something when you're out, just be like, am I gonna need this? Like, is this something that I couldn't get in the UK when I get home? For example, the posters that I bought, I couldn't really get in the UK, so I'm like, well, that's worth it. That vinyl, I have not found yet in the UK, so I was like, well, I'll buy it because I will use it. But you just have to be really sensible. Don't pack toiletries as well. Do not pack any toiletries, just buy them when you get there and like use them up before you leave. Do not bring anything that you can't just buy when you get here, basically, because it takes up so much space in your suitcase. And yeah, just try and find a balance between not packing your entire wardrobe, but also making sure that you've got like clothes that combine well with each other. Kind of do a capsule wardrobe vibe. So I've got like jeans, skirts, all of which I can kind of mix and match to make different outfits. And I think that has worked really well, which I didn't do when I went to Berlin. And so I ended up just buying more stuff to match more things and ended up having like 4 suitcases on my way back. So definitely don't do what I did. But also by the same token, you are just going to accumulate stuff, especially if you spend a whole year somewhere. Hopefully, my number one trick was going to be to say that hopefully when your family come visit and your friends come and visit, you can always send some stuff back with them. I know a lot of people that did that, especially like, well, obviously before Rona, like they would have their family come and visit, they would have baggage included and they would send stuff back with their family. So you can also consider that as an option. Just lay everything out before you go and just think, when I'm there, really try and visualize yourself when you're there. Obviously there's certain things that you're not going to foresee, certain things that you think that you need that you won't, or think that you don't need that you do, and you're never going to be perfect. But just try and think about, okay, I'm gonna have to bring all this back, and do I want to cause myself any extra stress? Probably not. Someone asked generally how it all gets organised. I really do want to answer this, but I know that it's so different for everyone. So I'm going to speak from the experience of a linguist at Oxford. I think a lot of linguists go through a similar thing. So basically, your tutors will basically ask you, what are you planning on doing to start with? I think we had to fill out like a vague intentions form, like what we're vaguely planning on doing at some point during our second year of university. But when you're a linguist, you know, it is very much up to you. For me, I had to decide what placements I was going to do, and then I had to apply for the Erasmus grant. I'm going to come on to finances in a minute. That's going to be the last thing that I cover in this video. So I had to apply for the grant agreement, the learning agreement. There's just a lot of paperwork that you have to like do. You have to be like, where am I going, for how long, what sort of placement is it, and that's how they calculate the money that they're going to give you. I also had to fill out a risk assessment. Normally you don't have to fill out a really extensive one. For COVID, we had to fill out a like 18-page front and back, if you get that reference, love you lots, risk assessment, being like, where are you going to buy hand sanitizer from, like what are you going to do if this very specific situation happens, which is fair, I get it. But yeah, we had to fill out a very long risk assessment on top of our normal sort of risk assessment, because you have to apply for, well, we were very strongly advised to apply for the university insurance. It is free, so great. And a lot of universities will get a bit funny if you travel without having their insurance. So I had to do, yeah, so I had to organise the placement, which I've already spoken about, get university travel insurance. I also got private medical insurance as well, because the whole EHIC, like EU, some people's EHIC still work. Like if you're a student, I really can't advise you on that because I still don't understand, and I don't think anyone in our year really understands if our EHICs are valid or not anymore. So we got medical insurance, we had to do the risk assessment for the university, apply for the Erasmus grant. If you're doing a traineeship, which I will come on to in a minute, if you're studying, obviously you'll have to sort out your modules, your accommodation, but a lot of that will be done with the university, like you'll be in contact with the uni, so it's not all on you to sort that out a lot of the time. If you're doing British Council, a lot more, that's if you're teaching English with British Council, is a lot more is sorted out for you. You know, you have to sort of like put your preference of places, but they'll assign you a place, they'll assign you a school, the school will work with you to get accommodation, etc, etc. So that, like, that's a lot different to working. That's one thing to bear in mind if you do apply for an internship. Like some internship will help you with accommodation, some internships will offer accommodation, some will be like just find it yourself. So I would say if you go to do an internship, it is kind of like more planning and preparation, because it's kind of, you have to like organize it all yourself. Obviously book flights, would recommend booking flexible flights because you never know what can happen. I would definitely book with someone like British Airways or someone there that's got like a good cancellation policy so that you don't lose out on any money. We also had to book, you know, like coronavirus tests. We had to do all of the forms, but I'm not really going to go through that because it changes so quickly that if you're watching this video in a year's time, it could be completely irrelevant or it could be completely different. What else did we have to do? Yeah, and then I kind of had a meeting with my tutor and she was like, right, what's the situation? What are you doing? Obviously, I ended up having like 5 or 6 of those meetings because everything kept changing. But the rest of it is kind of really up to you. The university is very hands-off. As long as they vaguely know where you are and what you're doing, which they obviously do if you apply for the travel insurance because you have to fill out the details of your trip. The university haven't really like contacted me that much this year, apart from when I had to pick a few modules for next year, like they emailed. I had to pick my accommodation for next year, obviously. But that's all completely separate to the year abroad. So yeah, basically in general, it's like quite a long process. Oh yeah, and obviously then on top of that now, you need to make sure that you apply for your visa. Normally it's just a case of there's an embassy website and you fill out the form on the embassy website and you have to have like passport photos, you have to have your proof of accommodation, your proof of medical insurance, proof that you're working in the country or studying in the country, like a letter of enrollment or something. You have to say how long you're going to be there for, if you want single entry, multiple entries. And then once you've filled out the form, and you can always ring the embassy and they'll always help you out with that, it's best to just do this all directly with the embassy. Don't like second guess yourself because they are quite specific with certain things that they want. But then once you've got your visa, you've got your accommodation, you've got your travel insurance, you've got your Monzo card or Revolut card or whatever it is that you need so that you don't get charged for foreign transactions, and you've got a vague outline of when you're going to go, then that's basically how it all works. And then you kind of just fly and then you have to settle in. One thing I really would recommend doing is taking a week or 2 weeks before and after you start your placement so that you have time to settle into the country and also to leave. Like, I kind of regret having my placement right up until the end of July because I'm only going to have a couple of days to sort of sort my stuff out and leave, and that's really just not a good vibe. A lot of people here have really struggled with that. They've finished their work and then they're like, oh my god, I literally have to go. I've got no time to like do all the rest of the things that I wanted to do. And also on the other side, it's really good to have a couple of days to just get acclimatized, find out where your nearest supermarket is, where your nearest gym is, where your nearest coffee shop is, where everything is before you get like thrown into a new work placement or teaching placement, or you know, you've got deadlines with the university that you're studying at. So I would really recommend leaving like 7 days either side if you can. If your visa allows it, it normally does. I know that the Spanish visa, you can enter 15 days before the start of your academic year or the start of your placement, and you can stay for 90 days after as a tourist, obviously not working or studying, but yeah. And finally, the main question that I got was finance. I did speak a little bit about this in my last video, so I'm not going to repeat myself too much, but essentially I'm just going to be really upfront and honest with my situation because I just don't think it's worth like deceiving anyone or like lying, because everyone was asking, how do you afford it? How do you afford to go out? How do you afford to like, do you have to budget? All of these things. I'm going to be upfront and say I am so incredibly blessed and fortunate that I am in the situation where I am quite comfortable financially. I have my Erasmus grant, as I mentioned. If you do a placement over 2 months, I'm not sure what's going to happen post Brexit. I think there's a new like a British equivalent. You basically get around between 300 and 500 euros a month as an allowance, which is what, you know, allows most people to do an unpaid internship because it is essentially paid and it covers your rent and some of your expenses depending on how expensive your rent is. So I get the Erasmus grant. I also have my student loan as well, which you do also get on your year abroad, and it can often be more than what you would get at university. And then I obviously also have the income from my scholarships from Oxford. I just have a few like scholarships that I got in my first year from my exam results, which means that I just get like a lump sum put into my account basically once a year until I graduate. And then I also obviously earn money from YouTube. I've not really used my YouTube money much because the other things are definitely enough to sustain me. As I said, I'm in a really incredibly fortunate situation, and that's why I don't want to be here like telling you about like how to like, you know, because I've not struggled with money on my year abroad essentially, and it has been an incredibly expensive year with the coronavirus tests, cancelled flights, cancelled accommodation, lost deposits. health insurance, all of that. Year abroad is an expensive time. Like, you will just, there's just random costs that you just don't bargain for that come up, like extra luggage fees or like delivery, like just random stuff. Like, it's an expensive year. I'm not gonna like sugarcoat it. Moving abroad and living abroad is an expensive experience, not only because of what I've just said, but also because you want to enjoy yourself. You want to make the most of it. You want to go out, you want to experience the culture, you want to make new friends. That often requires social events where you're buying food or drink or whatever. You're also very busy. You might find you have less time to cook depending on like what you're up to. Lots of factors go into it, but it is a significant investment. But there are funds, at least at Oxford, and I know at other universities, they have hardship funds. So Oxford has a hardship fund, and they also have a COVID hardship fund that you can apply to if you are in need and you find yourself on your year abroad without funds. I can't speak for other universities, but I do know that other universities do have those. I'm not going to say like specific ones in case I get it wrong, but speak with your professors, speak with your tutors if you're worried about it. There are like pockets of money. Erasmus, like grant, you get an extra grant if your household income is below a certain level. I know that. Obviously you get a bigger student loan if your household income is below a certain level. But as I said, I really don't want to like give financial advice because I know that everyone's situation is so unique and so different, and I just want to emphasize that I am completely aware of my privilege in that respect. You just have to be aware that sometimes moving your whole life abroad will come with unexpected costs, and there's nothing that you can really do to like foresee them. I know a lot of people worked summer before their year abroad, saved up some money that way, or they worked while they were on their year abroad alongside they got like a part-time job in a bar. YouTube is not my job per se, but I do earn an income from it, so that's kind of how I've been earning money. Like, I spend a lot of time outside of my internship editing, doing emails, doing brand deals, doing all of the behind the scenes stuff that you don't see. I'm in no way, shape or form saying that YouTube is a difficult job or that it's like the hardest job ever. I'm not saying that. That's just a matter of fact as to how I earn my money. Please don't take anything that I've just said the wrong way. I really do just recommend you speak with your university professors because they will know the best where funds and there are funds, grants, scholarships a lot of the time that you can make use of. This has been the longest video in the world. I think I've answered pretty much every question apart from how to make friends, but I did mention that in my last video. I will just quickly say that the best way to make friends is to just join every single Facebook group, every single Erasmus student group. Like, throw yourself out there, go to the events, be open, and like ask your friends like to introduce them to their friends. If they say that they're doing something else, be like, can I tag along? You just have to be pushy. And then once you've sort of established that little group, then people will come in. And I would also really recommend dating apps, because a lot of the people that it's not worked out with in that way have then just ended up being friends, and then I've met their friends. So dating apps, Erasmus Facebook groups, and just really just put yourself out there, and just ask to go and join in on plans. Even if you feel like you're imposing, just give it a go. You never know, you might find your people. Thank you so much to Wondrium for sponsoring this video. It really has been a long one, I know, and if you've made it this far, I'm very impressed. But all the information that you need to check out Wondrium will be in the description. Let me know in the comments if there are any questions that I didn't answer. I will be happy to try and give them a go in the comments. And I really hope you enjoyed this long chatty video. I mean, every single video of mine is long and chatty at the moment, but you know what I mean. And I will see you very soon with a new one. Bye guys. Mwah.